All right, let's dive into something pretty incredible today. We're going to explore a powerful prophecy from the book of Zechariah, written way back around 510 BC. We're going to do a close, verse by verse breakdown of the first 5 verses of chapter 12 and look at how this ancient text is seen to connect with events happening in our own time. So let's get right into it. I mean, that one line just sets this incredibly intense stage, right? This prophecy frames Jerusalem not just as some city on a map, but as a future point of massive global conflict, a cup of trembling for all the nations around it. This is the central idea we're going to unpack. So, before we even get to the prophecy itself, the text does something really important. It establishes exactly who is speaking and why they have the authority to say what comes next. Let's look at how verse 1 grounds this whole message in the power of the Creator. So it kicks off by saying, "This is the burden of the word of the Lord for Israel." But then look at this. Before delivering the message, it establishes who's talking. The one who stretcheth forth the heavens, layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man. This isn't just a prophet talking. The message is claiming the authority of the Creator of the entire universe. Okay, let's break this down a bit. First off, that word burden. The source material makes it clear this isn't a judgment on Israel, but a heavy prophecy for Israel that's really about its enemies. And the prophecy's authority is tied directly to God's power as the Creator. As you can see, the text connects this message to the creation of everything, the heavens, the earth, humanity itself. According to the source, this is a pretty direct rejection of alternative origin stories. And this idea is reinforced in other places with cross-references to books like Isaiah and Job. So with that absolute authority established, we get to the core of the prophecy in verse 2, this idea of the cup of trembling. And this verse gets incredibly specific. It talks about a future siege, not just against the city of Jerusalem, but against Judah, the whole region. In that image, a cup of trembling, it suggests that any nation that tries to drink from this cup, to conquer Jerusalem, will instead be totally overcome with fear, weakness, and confusion. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because the source material connects this ancient prophecy directly to modern history. If you look at this timeline, it suggests a pattern of fulfillment that began right after Israel was reestablished as a nation in 1947. It points to all these major wars, from 1948 right up to today. And the source suggests this whole pattern is building towards a final future conflict, the one referred to in the book of Revelation as Armageddon. The prophecy then shifts gears a little in verse 3. The metaphor changes. Jerusalem isn't a cup anymore. Now it's something even more immovable, the burdensome stone. Yeah, just imagine a giant, unmovable boulder. That's the picture here. Any nation that tries to move this stone, to burden themselves with it, isn't just going to fail. The text says they'll be cut in pieces, basically severely damaged just for trying. The prophecy is absolute about how this is going to turn out. This, of course, leads to the big question, right? When is in that day? What time period are we actually talking about here? Well, the source material lays out two main possibilities. On one hand, it could be talking about the period between when Zechariah wrote this and the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 66 AD. But on the other hand, and given the global language this seems to be the view the source favors, it's talking about the period after 1947, when Israel became a nation again. There's also this one little word in the text that makes a huge difference, the word though. In this context, it's interpreted to mean even if. So the prophecy holds true even if all the nations of the world gather against Judah. According to the text, the outcome is exactly the same. They will not succeed. All right, in verse 4, things really escalate. The prophecy pivots from describing Jerusalem's status to describing what God is actively going to do to its enemies. This is where we see direct supernatural action. I mean, the language here is just so vivid. It describes a battlefield thrown into complete chaos, not by military tactics, but by divine intervention. The enemy's cavalry, which was like the ancient equivalent of tanks, will be struck with panic, madness, and blindness. But notice the flip side. While all this chaos is raining down on the attackers, the text says God's eyes will be open upon the house of Judah, which means total protection. And the source offers a pretty fascinating modern interpretation for this verse. During the 1967 Six-Day War, as the Israeli Air Force was attacking Syrian air bases, the very first base they hit failed to warn any of the others. This total breakdown in communication, a kind of strategic blindness, allowed Israel to destroy Syria's entire air force while it was still on the ground. It was a huge turning point in the war. And that brings us to verse 5, which is really the climax of this whole passage. The focus shifts to the leaders of Judah and the moment they realize where their strength is actually coming from. So after witnessing all these things, the leaders of Judah have this huge realization. They say it in their heart, which means it's not just a thought, it's a deep core understanding that their strength isn't from their own army, but from the Lord of hosts, their God. And that title, Lord of hosts, means Lord of armies. It's a statement of supreme power. This is the moment of recognition. And get this, the source material has some absolutely incredible stories from modern times that seem to echo this very feeling.
Okay, picture this. It's 1948, the War of Independence. An Israeli platoon led by a guy named Ira Rappaport is defending Mount Zion. They are completely surrounded by hundreds of Jordanian soldiers, hopelessly outnumbered, and they have just 25 bullets left between them. I mean, it's over, right?
But then, just as they're getting ready to make their last stand, something totally inexplicable happens. The Jordanian soldiers suddenly freak out, throw down their weapons, and just run away, screaming the name Abraham. So, what on earth just happened? Well, years later, Rappaport actually met one of those Jordanian soldiers, and the man's explanation is just mind-blowing. He said that his entire army had seen a vision in the sky, the patriarch Abraham himself defending the Jewish soldiers. They fled in absolute terror. And that's not the only story like this. In another account from that same time, a large, well-equipped Arab army surrendered to a much smaller Jewish force. And as their delegation approached with a white flag, they asked this completely baffling question. The Jewish soldiers were just confused. They had no leaders like that. But the Arab delegation insisted they saw 3 commanding figures with long beards and white robes who were leading the Jewish forces. And these figures warned them that if they didn't stop fighting, they would all be destroyed. Terrified by what they saw, they surrendered on the spot. So these accounts from the source are presented as these incredible modern parallels to Zechariah's prophecy, moments where human leaders realized their strength came from a power they couldn't see. And it leaves us with a final thought-provoking question to chew on. What does all this suggest about the nature of prophecy and whether it continues to unfold, not just in ancient scrolls, but in the world we see around us today?